Stella, that was wonderful singing this morning. Again, I just, Paul, folks, I just enjoy it. Stella's singing, watching Dad, and that's just some of the greatest blessings of life. And we too often think that the greatest blessings of life are things that we have, and it's not things that we have, it's those that we have around us. And we are always, again, incredibly thankful for the grace of God that works in our lives. Gospel of John. Again, this is very familiar. We do this every Sunday. Jesus did many other miraculous signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. And again, not everything is listed here. Jesus did many more miracles than what John lists, but John lists kind of like a best of. So, okay. Here we go again. Yeah, David, if you just go ahead and advance that for me for the meantime, because my little clicker thing is not cooperating. All right. Oh, need to click that again. And let's try that again. There we go. Okay, raising Lazarus. I think, did Mimi leave her other one here? Yeah, let me try that one. Because once in a while, is this going to work? Okay, this one's working. All right, very good. All right. Was that you or was that me? That was me. Yay. All right. Now the other one fell on the floor. Okay, that one's done. All right. Jesus performs a lot of miracles. Now, it's one thing to raise someone from the dead who's just dead. For example, there's the widow and the child had just died, and Jesus comes and raises her from the dead. But in this case, it's a huge miracle because Lazarus is dead for 4 days in the tomb, wrapped up in all the bands they would use. This is an incredible miracle that Jesus is going to do. But before we get there, I need to do a little review. Okay, well, I'm ahead of myself. I do that a lot. Things that we're going to pull out of this text. Number one, Jesus operates on his time schedule, not mine. Okay, there are things that he does, and could you do this sooner or could you do that later? He operates on his schedule, not mine. Jesus asks us to believe his claims. When he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father but by me, he asks us, believe the claims. Jesus is the exclusive way to God. There is no other. And people will say, I don't believe that. Jesus said nice things, but I don't believe that part about what he said. That's the key part about what he said. Jesus does not do what we think he should do. We think that, Jesus is supposed to do this. He's supposed to do that. He's supposed to do, what I want him to do. Kind of like, the genie in the bottle thing. You rub the lamp a few times, genie comes out. Hey, Jesus, I want you to do so-and-so. Jesus does not do what we think he's supposed to do. Jesus can be very unrealistic in his commands. Jesus tells us to do things that we think might be silly, that we don't want to do. If we look in Colossians chapter 3, there are things that we shouldn't do. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to earthly nature, sexual morality, idolatry, greed, all these things that he lists. But wait a minute, I might like to do those things, and Jesus tells me I shouldn't. Jesus will tell us to do things that we might think are dumb to do. Why on earth should we leave everything behind to follow Christ? Why should we take up our cross and follow him? He tells us to. That's why. And some of the things people might say, that's just not fair. Jesus can make dead things live again. Now, we're not going to go too crazy with the metaphor idea, okay, but he can take dead things and make them live again. We'll get to that a little bit later if we have time. This might be a two-parter because the time is getting away. Jesus inspires belief in some people and panic in others. At the end of this section, it's fascinating, where some of the Jews said, okay, this is like the ultimate miracle that Jesus could perform. So he raised Lazarus from 4 days dead, being in the tomb, the big rock in front and all this, and they assumed that he was stinky inside because decay does this. And they saw this incredible miracle. And some of the Jews, in their tradition, they thought that the body, the soul, the spirit would hang around the body 3, maybe 4 days, and then leave. So this miracle even accounts for that, and that all the people would have thought, well, there's no hope for him. His spirit is gone and gone to the afterlife, gone to God. So people saw this and they said, this is it. This is the ultimate miracle. We're going to believe in Jesus now. And yet there were those who said, this is the ultimate miracle. Oh no, what do we do now? I know what we need to do. We need to kill him. And while we're at it, we should kill Lazarus too. Because if you kill Jesus and Lazarus is still around, it just gets very, very silly. In regard to time, a little bit of review. I'll read this with a little bit of haste, because we did this a couple weeks ago. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. When Jesus said this, or heard this, he said, this sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Yet when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. Jesus knew this was a terminal sickness that he had, and yet did he run there right away? No. He waited for 2 days, and it was a journey to get there. It might have taken a couple of days. Jesus says, let's go back to Judea. Rabbi, they're trying to kill you there. So the thing to draw here is that Lazarus, well, he's sick. And Jesus said even at that point, Lazarus is actually dead. By the time they sent the messengers, and Lazarus probably died before even Jesus got the message. So the timing here, Jesus says, I'm not going to get there in time. I'm not going to come in like that guy and just save the day and heal him at the last moment. That's not the timing that I'm going to do. Now, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. It's a long time. Now, he stayed where he was. He didn't go running there. Other situations of timing in Scripture are very important to look at. Remember Abraham? God says, Abraham, you're going to have a son. This is going to be great, but I want you to wait. Rhymes with great. I just came up with that. So, yeah, thank you for, okay. Yeah, I don't alliterate very well like my brother, Pastor Giles. But Abraham, they had to wait. And they did some dumb things. They had to wait. Joseph had to wait. How long was he in the prison for in Egypt? About 13 years. He's waiting because somebody forgot to tell the right story about him to get him out of jail sooner. David is running away from King Saul for years and years and years. And God has said, David, you're the next king of Israel. But yet he's got to run. He's got to wait. Daniel. He's taken to a land. And he stays there. He doesn't run away. He stays in that land. This is waiting. And sometimes the timing that we have is not the timing that God has. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the Jewish names Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. We should probably use their names a little bit more often than we do. So these guys, they're in a foreign land. They want to go back home when? Tomorrow. Today. Pack the bags. But God had them wait there. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, not very far, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. Now, I am suspicious that you have 2 sisters whose brother has now died, and I can't help but wonder if maybe some of the men who were coming to comfort them thought, hey, they've got a lot of property. Okay, all right. So, they went to comfort them on the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. So a little bit of role reversal. Martha's usually the one who stays home and makes sure everything's done. Mary's the one who's more emotive. And I think that Mary, she must have heard this as well. I think she's feeling kind of hurt because the Lord was not there when she wanted him to be there. His timing was different. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Your timing was off. But I know even now that God will give you whatever you ask. I don't know if Martha is making an actual request here to see her brother raised from the dead. I don't know that. That could be implied in the text, or we don't know exactly what's behind her question. Now, Jesus makes some really radical claims throughout Scripture. Now, here's one that he makes. Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Yeah, and Martha, well, yeah, of course he will. I know he'll rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Big claim. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? What a radical claim. I mean, Bill, God bless you, but if you stood up and you said, "I am the resurrection and the life," we would have a talk with you. The elders might pull you into the side room, and if that didn't work, we might call some other people to come help you get back to reality. So he's making a claim here. I am the resurrection. I am the life. Now, if Bill were to say that again, love you, Bill, but I'm not going to buy it. It's just not there. But Jesus makes this claim. And what does Martha say? We'll get to this again a little bit later. "Yes, Lord," she told him, "I believe your claims. I believe that you are the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God, who was to come into the world." Other things that Jesus claims. We've looked at a lot of the I ams throughout the Gospel of John. He says to the woman at the well, "I am the Messiah." And she believed her claim. She runs back. Could this be the Messiah? And I think she fully believed that she was. She just didn't want to look dumb in case he wasn't. But she believes in this. It's a great claim. Now, John chapter 6, verse 20. Jesus calms the storm. Now, this is not a particular thing where he says, "I am the storm calmer," but he is. And he says, when he comes to the boat, "Ego eimi." It is me. It is I. I'm the one. I am here. Calls himself the bread of life. Again, if I were to say, "I'm the bread of life," you'd go to McDonald's, okay? You'd just find some other place to go. The light of the world. He is the one who reveals all truth. All truth is incarnate in him. Philosophically, this is what he means when he says this. It's a huge claim. So if Jesus is the light of the world, why would we bother to go anywhere else for light? John 8:58. He is the before Abraham one. He says, "Before Abraham was, I am." Again, ego eimi. He's making a reference back to his identity as Yahweh come in the flesh. He's the gate for the sheep. We come in through him. We go out through him. He's the good shepherd. He lays down his life for the sheep. And here, I am the resurrection and the life. A couple others that we'll get to. He says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." This is a claim of extreme exclusivity. There are people who struggle. "Well, you say that Jesus is the only way." No, it's not me. Jesus said he's the only way. I'm just telling you what he said, so don't blame me for this, blame Jesus. And we'll get to this in John chapter 15 someday, where it says, "I am the true vine." If he's the true vine, that means there are other false vines, and we should avoid those at all costs, but rather invest our lives wholly in building a great relationship with Jesus. So Martha says, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world." Now, notice that when she says this, there were people around her, other Jewish people who had come, and they were there all around. And that some of them were there with Martha. She goes running off. They go with her for her to confess that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. Some of them would have viewed this as blasphemy. She's blaspheming. You know what you do with blasphemers, don't you? Stone them. Okay? So her making this statement puts herself at risk. It's not a mere intellectual assent that she makes by herself in the privacy of her own presence, but rather she makes a bold, open statement to Jesus. So she fully accepts his claims at who he is. Now, Jesus does not do what we want him to do sometimes. Sometimes he does something completely different. He doesn't do what we want him to do. He does what we need him to do. Let me try to say that again. That didn't come out right. Jesus does not do what we want him to do. He does what he needs. He does what we need him to do. You got the point. All right. It's allergies. I can't blame allergies for that. After Martha had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." Is that what Jesus said? No. Okay, so I think Martha here is probably being, maybe not quite truthful what she's trying to do. She's trying to get her sister to connect with Messiah again. And she's probably a little bit hurt that Jesus wasn't there. They did not come to be the rescuer in her timetable. The teacher is here, is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to mourn there. So now you have Mary is going to Jesus. The entourage is there. And Mary, when she reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and, like her sister, said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. The implication, Lord, you let me down. You should have been here. We sent word to you that Lazarus was sick, and we shouldn't have even needed to send word to you because you know all things. Where did you go? Why weren't you here? And I think she's hurt. Jesus, you let me down. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, and understand the funeral strategy here. They would hire mourners. They were professional mourners. They were really good at it. They would wail and weep and make all kinds of noises. They got paid because that just made, I guess, the funeral ceremonies that much better. Maybe more entertaining if you look at it that way, if you're a nasty person in your heart. Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews had come along with her, were also weeping. Jesus was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him? But some of them said, could not he who have opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Jesus let them down. You know, this great Messiah, this great figure, everybody is listening to him. He's just going to let you down. It comes down to, come back. There we go. What is my purpose in life? Is my purpose in life to manipulate Jesus, to manipulate God, to do what I want to do, or to say, Lord, I will do whatever you want that you might be glorified in my life? Recall that he said to his disciples, he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I'm glad I was not there, so that you may believe. Let us go to him. Earlier he says, Lazarus' death will glorify me. I hope that my death is glorifying to Christ. I hope my life is glorifying to Christ. I mean, what a terrible thing it would be to be dying and to say, God, you've turned your back on me. Rather, I need to be saying, Jesus, I'm getting so close. This is great. But your timing, I'm not going to rush this process. My purpose in life is not to get God to do what I want. My purpose in life is to find out what God wants me to do and to be doing that very thing, even if it's very costly. Sometimes God wants us to do things, and all we can do is go, what? What? You want me to do this? God, you want me to build an ark? What's an ark? They had not had one before. He says to Abraham, go, and I will show you where you're going when you get there. Hey, honey, get in the car. We're going to go somewhere. Well, where are we going? I don't know. We'll know when we get there. Deuteronomy chapter 6. The instruction is very, very clear to teach people, to teach your children in every aspect of your life. When you get up, when you lie down, when you go to work, when you're just walking along the road, teach them to obey the commandments I've given to you. Teach them all this stuff. Some of the commandments that God has and had for the Jewish people. How many of you like lobster? Sinner. Okay. How many of you like shrimp? Sinners. I won't mention bacon because I have to raise my hand for that. There were some things that God had for the nation to do that they might not want to do. God had his purposes. So you trust him. Kadesh Barnea, God tells the people of Israel, hey, you need to go up into the promised land because I've got the way all set for you. The 12 spies, of course, they came back and 10 of them said, it's a terrible land. It devours those who live there. Everybody dies. And besides that, there's giants that live there. Everybody, it's a terrible land. It devours those who live there, but yet there's people there who are doing really well. They didn't see the dumbness of what they were saying. 7 dips in the Jordan River makes you better. Okay, what a dumb thing to do. The people are taken to Babylon, And God says to them, hey, you know what? You're going to be here for 70 years. 70 years, buy houses, make yourself at home, maintain your Jewishness, but make yourself at home. But I want to go home now. It's not reasonable that you have me staying here, God, for 7 years, 70 years. I know the plans I have for you. Plans to give you a future and a hope. Remember that thing with the axe head? Remember that? Okay. All right. And what made the axe head float? That just threw a stick in the right kind of stick in the water, make an axe head float. Kind of a miraculous thing. It's like, okay, I've dropped my cell phone in the lake. Oh, I've got the solution for you. God told me what to do. I'm going to throw in a stick, and it floats to the surface. Just weird stuff. Jesus tells the servants, take those 6 stone jars, fill them with water. Okay, it doesn't make sense, but I'll do it because you said so. Sometimes things just don't make sense. Once more, Jesus deeply moved, and the sounds, the description here is deeply moved, made a sound like a horse would make like a snorting sound when it was like really upset. I don't know horses. I guess they do that when they're, anybody know horses? When they're upset, do they make like a really low, they make it like kind of a, okay, all right, that's the noise. Don't do it for us, okay? Because no, okay, all right. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance, and these were big rocks. It's not like a little pebble, big rock, a lot of weight to it. Take away the stone, he said. Did Jesus need them to take away the stone? No. Stone, boom, you're gone. He could have vaporized it. But he tells them to take away the stone, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Martha, but Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. They didn't have all the embalming processes. They just kind of wrapped you up in some strips of cloth and spices, and they put you in the tomb. And Martha's like, what you're wanting me to do, doesn't make sense. I mean, it's terrible. I don't want to be too gross here, but like when you drive by a dead deer that's been there for on the side, it's like terrible. Who wants to be around that? But Jesus says, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Do what I've asked you to do. Now, I'm sure she didn't move it herself. She had some servants move it. Do what I'm telling you to do, and you will see what God's glory is all about. This is going to be a 2-parter because it's noontime at this point. So, things to pull out for this morning. Number 1, God's timetable is not mine. It's not yours. We like to see things done now. That's how we like it to be done. But God has a different agenda than what I have got. My agenda is, hey, what works well for Steve? That's what I want to see happen. Bingo. That's what I want. And God is like, no, I have a plan. I want to be glorified in your life, and you have to wait for me to do this in your life that I might be glorified. He's not a genie in a bottle. He doesn't do what we want him to do. He doesn't do what we say. He doesn't follow our orders. We follow his. And sometimes he asks us to do weird things. Repenting is a weird thing. The world says, hey, here's all this great stuff for you. You need to be doing all these great things. And we say no. The world might say we're dumb, but we will obey God anyway because we're going to trust him because he's got a plan. And if he asks us to do something dumb, we do it. I think one of the dumbest things, and I'll finish with this, one of the hardest things that God asked anybody to do was he asked Hosea. And recall this story. Hosea, I want you to marry a woman of ill repute. That's what I want you to do. What's Hosea going to do? Hey, Mom, I found the woman for me. God's will for my life. Mother had a heart attack. That's why she's never mentioned in the passage. Whatever God has for us to do, just get it done. And God has his own plans, his own purposes, and he does not tell us in advance, because if he did, we would surely mess it up.